when I was growing up, it was really only the Hail Mary that we would pray for Mother Mary. I didn't know much about Mother Mary apart from, at funerals we would often pray the rosary. At churches, we would go to the grotto and light a candle in front of Mother Mary. But growing up, I would say I didn't know much about Mother Mary other than Mother of the Church, Mother of our Lord. But I didn't really have any devotion to her growing up. Hello, my name is Alexander. I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I was born in Malaysia in a family of 6. Both my parents are Catholic. Me and my siblings were all raised Catholic. We moved to Australia in 2006, and I've grown up and lived here ever since. But whilst in Malaysia, my parents made sure that all of us, were raised strongly in the faith. Malaysia is an Islamic country, so we really had to stick together and have that firm foundation of faith. We grew up reading Bible stories, learning about Adam and Eve, Samson, Delilah, Noah's Ark, all these things. We went to bed praying the I Believe, Hail Mary, Our Father, and all that. We were really raised well and had a good foundation. My parents did their best to make sure that all 4 children grew up to be good Catholics. But I think all of that changed once we moved here. I think they thought that this was a Christian country, so I think they took it easy a little bit. And here we didn't go to Catholic schools, so you really stopped your Catholic education, I think, after year 6, after the age of 11 or 12. Whereas in Malaysia, you learn all through your teenage years. And I think really that's how we sort of grew away from the faith a little bit, or stopped asking questions. And instead, we learned through our schooling system or through friends or through other things in Australia. Growing up here in Australia, especially when I went to university, I did quite well. I got a lot of awards and scholarships. And so the Australian government had sent me to go to Singapore to study and to work, and to go to the US to study and to work. And this really was the first time I was away from the family for an extended period of time. And you could say this is when my faith was tested, Of course, you move to a new country, you must build new habits, build a new circle of friends. So whilst I went and I started this new life there, I began going to church, but after some time, because the majority of my friends were not Catholic now, I had no family that were Catholic. Eventually I stopped going to church. I drew away from the church. I never stopped believing, but I stopped these habits, stopped receiving the sacraments. And this, I feel, is what, really alienated me from God's grace, if you will. And then after going to the US as well, that was challenging me again to grow deeper into the faith. And it was tough. It was tough. I had to do this by myself, and it's not till I encountered some adversity, I think, that when you live this secular life, you take in ideas from the government, from non-Catholic people, and that becomes your new way of living, and that leads nowhere good. So that's what drew me back into the faith. Whilst living in Singapore, about halfway through my stay, I took in a lot of these ideas that my friends had, ideas on relationships, ideas on what your life should be, ideas what your job should be, ideas on family, and a lot of these were not good ideas, very secular ideas. I didn't know what to believe. The teachings were there, I was just not, ignorant of it, I wasn't aware of it. And I had a relationship at that point, and she posed to me this one question. She just said, were we to have kids, what are your thoughts if the child did this or did that? And that really lit a fire in me. I said, I don't know why. I'm not asked about the logic or why they teach this, or why it is this, why do I believe this and not that? And from then on, I really started asking questions. I went online, and there's a big Catholic presence online, which I wasn't aware of prior to that, whether it was a Bible in a year, weekly homilies, documentaries, all this stuff I never watched before. And I just went online and typed in that same question: is why do Catholics believe this thing? and I was inundated with all of his material, great material. And I really understood why they taught that, and it made sense to me. It was truth. What I was searching for was truth. And this was right around the time I was coming back or leaving my stint in Singapore. Coming back here, leaving Singapore, I was then away from that group of friends, coming back to the family and back to, your regular Catholic activities, going to church, going to Mass. And along that time, I was applying for a job here in the city, and after my interview, something was just prompting me to go for confession. I hadn't been to confession for maybe more than 2 years at this point. And I just looked up times, the cathedral was open, the confessional was open. I just walked in and I said, Father, it's been more than 2 years since my confession, these are my sins. And I think you could tell that I was sincere, and he absolved me, and then he asked me to pray the sorrowful mysteries of the rosary as my penance. And I didn't know what that was. I knew the rosary, I didn't know what the mysteries were. So I just said, Father, can you please repeat that so I remember? And he said, the sorrowful mysteries of the rosary, pray that. And he absolved me from my sins. I came home that day and I had, sat on the couch and went on YouTube and typed in how to pray the sorrowful mysteries, and I prayed along with it. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a very brief rosary, but I don't know, something lit a fire in me after that. I started praying the rosary, daily. I even asked my father, I said, hey, do you have a Bible somewhere in the house? I've never read the Bible as an adult. I read the kids' Bible. And he said to me, the Holy Spirit will lead you. He said, just take the Bible. I didn't know what he meant at the time. When you have some curiosity about the Holy Spirit, I think he just comes flooding in. And as I read the Bible, that really fueled my prayer of the rosary, because I could understand each mystery. In those sorrowful mystery, I could better understand what the agony in the garden was, what Jesus was going through. I could better understand what, the crucifixion was, or the scourging and the pillar, the crowning of thorns. And not just that, as I prayed the rosary more and more and more, I find I could really meditate on things that were going through my life. At that time, I'd broken up from those friends in that relationship, and I felt quite isolated. I wasn't working, I wasn't studying, I was just stuck. So I spent a lot of that time praying the rosary and better learning the Gospels. I didn't really know quite what I was doing. All I knew was that people would say, when you pray the rosary, it's like you're holding Mother Mary's hand, or when you pray the rosary, Mother Mary is taking you and introducing you to the life of her Son. So when I was learning more about the rosary and praying more about the rosary, obviously I couldn't do it by myself. So after learning how to pray it on YouTube, I had to find a more practical way, driving around, walking around in my room. So I downloaded this Catholic prayer app, and I would say the rosary through there. I would pray with it, pray along almost with the rosary. And one of the months they introduced something, it was called 33-day Marian devotion or Marian consecration. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but I just signed up. I said, I'm praying the rosary. I also learned this prayer called the Memorare, a Marian prayer. And I said, okay, this is a 33-day meditation. Let me just do it. And then I started this meditation, and it was very powerful, I thought, very, very powerful, by Saint Louis de Montfort. And it leads up and it gets you spiritually ready. You learn more about Jesus through the eyes of Mother Mary. And it ends in your act of consecration to Mother Mary. So I started this process. At this point, I was already going for daily Mass. I was praying the rosary regularly. I was going for confession regularly. I'd started my new job. And right in the lead up to the actual act of consecration, the lady said on the meditation, she said, things may happen as you get closer to Jesus, things might pull you away, I didn't really know what that meant, but right around the time when I was leading up to this act of consecration, all sorts of stuff would happen. Not just spiritual stuff, but want to call it, oppression, nightmares, things going wrong, everything that could go wrong would go wrong. And she recommended just go for daily mass, do your confession, fast if you can. So I did that, and it really helped. It steadied me. But even right up to the act of consecration, I would get these, they call it your devil on the shoulder or whatever, but these things would say to me, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Because right about this time I was also discerning what I'm going to do. Am I going to start a family? Am I going to get married? Am I going to pursue priesthood? And I discerned that, I really wanted to pursue marriage. This is what I was called to. And this voice kept saying in my head, okay, don't do this because they don't want you to be married. They want you to become a priest. Don't do it. Just this weird voice, right up to the point where I was walking from my work, even on the day of consecration, walking up to the cathedral. I was fasting at this point. A few days I'd been fasting. And it's still right up through Mass, through me walking up to the tabernacle, it's still this voice, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But I remember, I go back to that same first rosary I prayed, the Sorrowful Mysteries of the Rosary, and the fifth mystery, the crucifixion. Jesus says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. So I just prayed that, that prayer came to me, and I made my act of consecration before the Blessed Sacrament. And I just said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. At that point, I was quite close with Mother Mary and Jesus, I would say. I would, Mother Mary referred to her very affectionately. Even Jesus I referred to, as a brother at that point. And it was a leap of faith, but I took it because at that point through praying the rosary, through reading the Gospels, I really came to know the character of Jesus, and I trusted in that. And I knew I'd be giving my life to him through this consecration, but I took that leap of faith and I said, if you want me to be a priest, I trust that you know better than me, I'll be a priest. If you want me to be married, I trust you can find me a great wife. Either way, I trust in you. Into your hands I commit my spirit is what I said. And my life really transformed after that consecration. Not all at once, but slowly, slowly, slowly. I remember I was very isolated at that point. Even Jesus, after he was baptized in the River Jordan, he says immediately the Spirit led him to the desert, and for 40 days he was tested and he was fasted, and finally at the end he was tormented by the devil. He was challenged. I feel like that was what I was going through at that point. I was isolated for about 2 months there. And right after I did this consecration, that was sort of what pulled me out of that desert. And that even at the end, I was being tempted with all sorts of things. But right at the end, it pulled me out of the desert. And then I really started to meet people. People at the church noticed I was going a lot. They asked me to start being acolyte, start serving at the midday Mass. I would normally go for Mass during my lunch break. So I started doing that. And then because you're on the altar and, all sorts of people come into the cathedral at that time, different people take notice of you, different people come and speak to you. And at that point, I remember I was struggling trying to meet other like-minded Catholics that weren't, they weren't old. weren't old people, they weren't priests, but they were, around my age and strong in the faith. And that was one of the prayers I made to Mother Mary. I said, Mother Mary, can you please, I'll leave this to you. Can you help me find not just, friends who are devoted to you like I am, or of the faith like I am, but also can you help me find a woman like you, I said to Mother Mary. And I made these prayers. And then slowly after time, people would approach me and invite me for a retreat, or invite me for, to go on a rosary walk, or these sorts of things. And then over a span of the year, I really built this great, I wouldn't say I built, but Mother Mary and Jesus, they really led me to this great circle of friends, through the charismatic Catholic community here in Perth, through the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, who look after, missionary work in the Holy Land, to in my local parish here, there are 4 Dominican sisters there. I met all sorts of people who invited me to join all sorts of ministry, and because I'd spent, you want to call it, those 40 days in the desert and been led out of that, I just felt so full of the, and wanting to give, so full of the Spirit and wanting to give back, that I just said yes to all these opportunities, and that was answers. Prayers were answered. All I had to do was persist in those 40 days. With regards to discernment, something that really helped me when I was in the US, I think that spiritual oppression really hit me hard, because by the time I went to the US, I was already reading the Bible, I was praying the rosary a lot. really growing strong in my faith. And I remember just having this horrific dream one day, which made no sense to me. And then I had to walk past church every day on the way to class, and I just stopped in one time and just asked the priest, Father Dominic, I said, this is what I'm experiencing since I've arrived here. Can you recommend anything? And he just said, keep coming to daily mass, he said, because it wasn't a practice at that point. He just said, keep coming to daily mass, keep receiving the sacrament, keep doing your confession, and these things will leave you be. One of the things that Father Dominic told me, apart from receiving the sacrament daily and regular confession, going to mass, was Ignatian spirituality. Around that time I was studying was the feast day of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and he taught us the examen prayer as well as the discernment of spirits. And the examen is examination of conscience each day, noticing God in your day-to-day life, that sort of spirituality. But the discernment bit was very interesting to me, because he was talking about how do you discern what is a thought from you, what is a thought from God, and what is the thought from the devil. How do you discern what is what? At that point, I was still pursuing a very secular life. Although I'd come back to God, I was still pursuing, accolades, whether it was in study or career, or whatever these things. And this thing was mind blowing for me. And I remember I was having this conversation with this one lady. She's a Muslim lady, but I just told her, I said, this is what I'm going through. I don't know whether to stay here and to keep studying for the next 5 years. I really want to be married. I don't know if I have to go home and be with family and look for a bride. And she just said to me, she said, Alex, she says, I have 2 PhDs. She's a very accomplished woman. She said, I have 2 PhDs. I work for this and this sultan in the UAE. But I'm in my 40s. I have more money than I need. But I have no husband, I have no boyfriend, and I'm probably too old to start a family, she said. And then she looked at me and she said, Alex, you can get this degree anytime, but who's to say you'll ever find, love? Who's to say you ever have a chance to start a family again? You can do this anytime. And I just looked at her and I said, oh my gosh, I said, God is speaking through you, thank you. And I received that, and I packed up my studies and I thanked Father Dominic. I said, I'll see you later. And I came back to Australia. I came back to Perth after 2 or 3 years away from doing this studying and all that. I said, no, this is not for me. And that's something I carry forward now, even in making big decisions. To propose to a fiancé or to choice of work, to really pray and meditate on it, to examine how you feel throughout the decision, to ask God for what He's thinking, what He recommends. That's something I practice daily now, that discernment of spirits. And I encourage people who are going through big life decisions to also practice that. To say, God, not what I want, but what is it that you want? Make that Marian prayer again, let it be done to me according to your word, not my own. So that really helped. I watched this movie on Padre Pio. And in this movie, he walks out of his room, and at the end of the hall is a statue of Mother Mary. And before he goes to meet with the other friars, he holds Mother Mary's hand and he bows. But when he gets back up, you notice that it's not a statue anymore, it's actually Mother Mary there. And I thought, oh my gosh, whilst I spiritually come to know Mother Mary, she's actually, as they say, bodily assumed to heaven. She's flesh and blood. She's still a very real person. Then I too followed Padre Pio. I got a statue, I put it at the end of my hall in front of my room each morning, or when I enter the room, do the same thing. I hold Mother Mary's hand, and you bow. I put pictures of Mother Mary around the house now. And you just really acknowledge Mother Mary, not just as some abstract thing, but all throughout your day as you would your regular mother. The graces that you receive from that, the consolation that you receive, the guidance that you receive from Mother Mary that she gives you when you actually acknowledge her as your mother, as a real person. Of course, you would ask your mother for advice if you brought a girl home or you brought a guy home, someone you'd want her advice. I did the same thing with Mother Mary, And not just that, I went one step further. I said, Mother Mary, you pick. I've picked all the wrong people, you pick. Just as you would a mother. And to build that, nurture that relationship, I encourage everyone to do that. So in that sense, Mother Mary to me is very real, very, very real, not just some abstract concept. to Jesus through Mother Mary. You know, I have some family members who are Protestant. They'll say, I have a direct line with Jesus. Why do I need anyone else? You know? But then in the same breath, they go and ask someone to pray for them. If you have a direct line, why do you need someone to pray for you? So to me, Mother Mary really is, there is no greater person you can ask to pray for you than Mother Mary. You know, the second luminous mystery, the wedding at Cana, I think that for me, for a long time, that was my favorite mystery. Because these wedding guests who are asking for the impossible, and Mother Mary can see that, and she intercedes on their behalf to Jesus. You know, she says to the servants after, you know, do whatever he tells you. For me, that was a huge story, because I was praying for all sorts of things at the time, impossible things, and I would lean on Mother Mary to go to Jesus on my behalf. Of course, I'm praying to Jesus, but I would say, I would pray that mystery, you know, Lord, please take my water and turn it into wine. Mother Mary, please help me, you know, heed your words, help me to do whatever it is he asks of me. So whatever prayers you have, whatever discernment that you have, really take that through Mother Mary. You know, pray the Memorare, pray the rosary, through an act of consecration, and through that, not only are you praying to Jesus, now Mother Mary too is, you know, interceding on your behalf. You know, and she continues to intercede on mine, and she continues to bring me closer and closer to her Son. So I'm very grateful for that, and I encourage everyone to go to Jesus through Mother Mary.
My name is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. We're looking at the miraculous icons of the Virgin Mary from all around the world. A famous one from Croatia, Mother of Bistrica, is one of these black Madonnas that are seen throughout all of Europe. In this case, it was made around 1400, but it was buried for safekeeping in protection from the Turks. But in 1525, a supernatural light shone upon that spot, and they rediscovered where it was buried. In 1588, they had to bury it in the walls again, and in 1684, it was discovered another time. In 1930, she was declared the Mother of Croatia and became known as one of the most famous Marian icons in all of Christian history.